The taxi stopped and a woman got into the back seat. Her movements were slow and she kept her face down. "Where do you want to go?" he asked, turning on the meter. She said an address in a quiet voice. Something about the way she spoke felt strange. As he started driving, he looked at her through the rear-view mirror. She was staring out of the window, not saying anything. Then, for a moment, their eyes met in the mirror. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. His heart started beating faster. He knew this face, but that was not possible. She had been missing for 15 years. The cab moved through the quiet city streets. The woman sat in the back, staring out of the window. She had not said a word since giving her destination. The driver stole glances at her through the mirror. Something about her felt familiar. Her posture, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the slight tremble in her hands, it stirred something deep in his memory. Then he noticed the small scar near her eyebrow. His grip on the wheel tightened. His chest felt heavy. A flash of the past hit him. A little girl, laughing as she ran through their childhood home. His younger sister, the sister he had lost. But it could not be. He forced himself to focus on the road, but his mind raced. Could it really be her? Was he imagining things? The silence in the car felt louder than ever. The hum of the engine filled the silence. The woman finally spoke, her voice soft yet weary. "Do you know if this street used to have an old bakery? My father used to take me there when I was little." The driver's hands stiffened on the wheel. His heart pounded. That bakery, it was their childhood place, their father's favorite spot. He swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yeah, there was one. A small shop with blue doors. Best pastries in town." She let out a small, wistful laugh. "That is the one. My brother used to love their chocolate tarts." His breath caught in his throat. His brother. His mind spun. He needed to be sure. "What happened to your brother?" he asked as casually as he could. The woman's expression darkened. She hesitated, staring out of the window. "I lost him a long time ago." A chill ran down his spine. It was her. It had to be. Everything around him faded. The woman in his back seat was not just another passenger. She was his sister. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. His heart pounded against his ribs. He had to tell her. Taking a deep breath, he spoke carefully. "You did not lose him. He is right here." Silence. The woman frowned, confusion flashing across her face. "What do you mean?" His voice wavered. "It is me. I am your brother." She let out a sharp, breathless laugh. "That is impossible." Her hands trembled as she searched his face, her mind rejecting what her heart was beginning to accept. He could see it, the flicker of recognition, the battle between logic and longing. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a worn-out pendant. "Dad gave us matching ones. You had the other half." Her breath hitched, slowly, as if in a trance. She pulled out a chain from under her scarf. The other half of the pendant dangled from it. Tears welled in her eyes. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The years of separation, the pain of losing each other, it all came crashing down. "Where have you been?" Her voice broke. His throat tightened. "I searched for you. Foster. Homes, different cities. I thought you were gone." Tears streamed down her face. "I thought the same about you." The weight of lost years pressed down on them. Two lives torn apart by fate, now sitting in the same car, trying to bridge a lifetime of distance. She covered her face, sobbing. "I waited. I hoped. But I gave up." He swallowed the lump in his throat. "You do not have to hope anymore. I'm here." The cab sat motionless at a red light, but inside, their world was shifting. The years of silence were breaking, one painful memory at a time. She stared out of the window, her fingers gripping the edge of her scarf. The city lights blurred as memories surfaced, ones she had buried for years. I never stopped wondering where he was. she whispered, but after a while, I convinced myself he was gone. Her voice wavered, but she continued. The night we were separated, I remember crying until my throat was raw. One moment, we were together, holding hands, and the next, I was alone. No one told me where he went. No one cared to answer my questions. The driver remained silent, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. He knew what was coming, but hearing it from her lips was unbearable. They placed me in a shelter first. It was cold, full of strangers. I kept waiting, thinking maybe someone would come for me, but days passed, then weeks. Eventually, I stopped asking. She let out a bitter chuckle. Foster homes were not much better. Some were kind, some were not, but none of them were family. She turned to him now, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. You do not know what it is like to spend your entire childhood looking into faces, hoping one of them belongs to someone who loves you. He swallowed hard. I do. A deep breath. She pressed on. When I turned 18, I was out on my own. I worked, studied, did everything I could to survive, but no matter how much time passed, I always felt like something was missing, like a part of me had been ripped away. Her hands trembled. I searched, in every way I could, but I had nothing to hold on to. No last name, no records, no one who remembered. The weight of her words settled between them. All these years, they had been searching for the same thing, walking parallel paths, never knowing how close or how far they truly were. Tears streamed down her face now. I thought I had no family left. He felt his own eyes burn. You do. The silence between them was thick with years of loss. She let out a shaky breath. I do. She stared at him, her hands gripping the edge of her coat. The silence between them was thick with years of unanswered questions. I do not know if I can do this, she whispered. I have spent my whole life learning how to survive alone. He leaned forward, his voice steady. You do not have to anymore. Her eyes darted to the door handle, the instinct to run deeply ingrained in her. Trust had never come easily. You have a life, she said hesitantly. A home, a job. I cannot just walk in and expect to fit. His grip tightened on the wheel. You do not have to fit. You already belong. Her breath hitched. No one had ever said that to her before. I searched for you, he continued. Every year, every city I passed through, I wondered if you were out there. And now that I have found you, I will not lose you again. Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. I do not know how to be someone's sister anymore. You do not have to, he said softly. Just be here. That is enough. She looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, he was not just a stranger offering kindness. He was home. A single tear slipped down her cheek. What if I am not who you remember? He smiled, his own eyes wet. Then we start, fresh. Her hands trembled as she reached for his. For the first time in years, she was not alone. A deep breath, a hesitant nod, a silent agreement. This time, fate had brought them together, and this time he would not lose her. They sat across from each other in a small diner, the hum of quiet conversations filling the space between them. The past was heavy, but for the first time it was not unbearable. She traced the rim of her coffee cup, stealing glances at him. This feels strange, she admitted. Good, but strange. He chuckled, sliding an old, worn-out photo across the table. I carried this with me for years. It was the only proof I had that you were real. She picked it up carefully, her fingers brushing over the faded edges. Two children, smiling, unaware of the storm that would tear them apart. A lump formed in her throat. I thought no one remembered me, she whispered. I never forgot, he said, his voice firm. And I never will. The road ahead would not be easy. They were strangers in some ways, family in others. But they had found each other again, and that was enough. She smiled, small but genuine. "So what happens now?" He grinned. "Now we start fresh. No promises of perfection, no unrealistic expectations, just two lost souls ready to rebuild what was once stolen from them, and this time they were not alone. Life has a way of pulling people apart, but sometimes it brings them back together when they least expect it. For years, they lived separate lives, carrying the weight of unanswered questions and unspoken words. And then, in the most ordinary moment, a simple taxi ride, fate intervened. Not all reunions are perfect. Pain does not vanish overnight, and broken bonds take time to heal. But what matters is the choice, to hold on, to fight for what was lost, to embrace the chance that life rarely offers twice. Perhaps there is someone out there waiting for you, just like they were waiting for each other. If fate gave you another chance, would you take it? If you were moved by this story, let us know in the comments. What would you do if you found someone you thought was lost forever? Do you believe in fate, or is everything just a coincidence? Your thoughts matter, and your support helps us share more stories like this. If this story touched your heart, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Who knows, maybe someone out there needs to hear this today.